Welcome everyone. It's 12 noon, straight up noon. My name is Jack Kleemeyer and welcome to our first ETI Leadership Insights webinar, lunch and learn, if you will. And this should go an hour, may not go that long, may go a little over. We'll see how it goes. I've timed it out a couple different times, so we'll enjoy that. The thing to remember about this is this is interactive. So those of you that are on chat, you can chat in. There's a chat box there. You can chat in. It should be along the bottom of your screen. You'll see that. For those of you that are on voice, I believe it's *6 will unmute you if you want to be unmuted. You're all on mute now. But on behalf of ETI Performance Improvement, Julie, Raymond, Dawn, Justin, Rick, and me, Jack, I want to welcome you to the very first one of Leadership Insights. This is going to be kind of an overview of the 21 laws, the first two of the 21 laws by John C. Maxwell. And I think you're going to enjoy this and apply some of the principles that we get from our time together. So my name is Jack Kleemeyer. I do the professional development here at ETI. I'm an executive director with the John Maxwell team and a certified coach, speaker, and trainer. And I bring, gosh, long time, 30 years or more of leadership development, learning, more so on the application side where I was actually in leadership or a leadership role than I did a learning piece. So my experience is practical and I'll share what I can with you. And we're available for you anytime you have a question, a need, a challenge. Just give Dawn or myself or Rick a call and we can certainly help you out with challenges that you might be experiencing. So let's jump into it. There was a funny story in the 21 Laws book that John Maxwell told. He was going through some of the leadership laws, and it's fun to watch him do this real time because he never gives all 21 at one time because he says then you wouldn't buy the book, right? So he wants everybody to buy the book. So that's the key. And he sold, gosh, I think 3 million copies of the 21 Laws of Leadership. But as he was going through those, they were at a break, and someone walked up to John, a person, and said, "Hey, I know you're going to cover all this, but what's the one thing? What's the one thing I need to know?" And so John thought for a second, and John's very good on his feet. He said, "Well, the one thing you need to know about leadership is that there is more than one thing that you need to know about leadership." And that'll be our theme throughout our whole time together. Is that piece is that there's more than one thing. There's different elements, different facets of it. And we'll explore some of those in the first two laws, the law of the lid and the law of influence today. Some things never change. Leadership principles are unchanging. They stand the test of time. So there's not, it would be very rare, very unusual if there was ever a new leadership principle. They've been around forever and they will continue to be around together forever. So to remember, help us keep in mind as we go through the 21 laws and go through our learning today, that the laws can be learned. So it's not rocket science. We can learn these laws, and part of growth is learning the laws. I'll talk about that more in a minute. The laws can stand alone. Each one is its own pillar, its own entity that makes a difference in an organization or in a person. And the laws carry consequences with them. Following them carries consequences on the upside. Not following them carries consequences on the downside. And the laws are the foundation of leadership. These laws are the foundation of leadership. So the thing to remember is you're capped. You're there by the lid, how much you are a leader. One thing more to remember is that each law is a tool ready to be picked up and used to help you achieve your goals and your dreams, your aspirations, to add value to other people. If you pick up just one, you'll become a better leader. And especially on this first one, the law of the lid, if you can get a handle on this law, you'll see an incredible impact of leadership on every aspect of your life. You just will. You'll see an incredible benefit to that. The law of the lid says leadership ability determines a person's level of effectiveness. Leadership ability determines a person's level of effectiveness. And another way to say that, leadership ability is the lid that determines a person's level of effectiveness. The lower the ability to lead, the lower is the potential. And as we talk more about this, we'll talk about how do you increase your ability to lead? How do you get that to go better, to become better? In the book, John talks about the McDonald's brothers, Maurice and Dick McDonald, who had the restaurant. And of course, we all know the history that Ray Kroc bought that from them. But the McDonald's brothers could never get it to go past the one restaurant they had. They could never get it to expand. They didn't have much leadership ability. Ray Kroc came in and within a year had 100 restaurants around the country. And within 4 years, I think he had 500 restaurants. So it's how do you do that? Now that can be as a branch manager of a credit union. It could be as a middle manager of an organization. It can be as a frontline supervisor. Anywhere you are a leader, it could be even in your home. When you increase your leadership ability, you increase your level of effectiveness. And to increase that, you need to become a student of leadership. The higher you want to climb, you need more leadership. You have to change, you have to grow, and you have to get more. You have to become more of a leader to make a greater impact, to greater influence. Needs to be, and we'll talk more about that in the law of influence. But for example, if you think about success without leadership, you could have a great desire to be to be a leader. And that you could be dedicated to learning, dedicated to growing, but if you don't grow your leadership ability, your effectiveness is not very high. But if you focus on your leadership ability and you bring that into play, that's a 600% return by increasing your leadership ability. And that's the key thing. The law of diminishing returns tells us that it'll take as much effort or more to increase your effectiveness if you go through just being dedicated, then it'll take more energy to get to the next two. Like on our chart here, it shows it at a 7 or 8. But to fill this out, it'll take more energy to get that done. It'll take much more energy to get those last two pieces. So leadership ability is always a lid on personal and organizational effectiveness. If a person's leadership is strong, the organization's lid is high. And conversely, if not, then the leadership, the organization's got a weakness somewhere. All right, so let's talk about you. Let's take it for a minute. And if you're driving, don't do this. But if you're not driving, please grab a piece of scrap paper at your desk. And I want you to rate yourself on the scale of 1 to 10 in these three columns, these three areas that are going to pop up on the screen. And I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. So the first one, rate your scale on a 1 to 10, where 10 is really good, excellent. 1 is, well, not excellent. It's just not quite so good. So rate yourself real quick: character, charisma, commitment, communication, competence, courage, and discernment. Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 on those 7 in that first column. Just rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. And I'll give you a minute to do that. And then add those up. We're going to add 3 columns of numbers, so add the score up, 1 to 10. Character, charisma, commitment, communication, competence, courage, and discernment. Some folks can see the screen, some folks can't, so that's why I'm reading those. Character, charisma, commitment, communication, competence, courage, and discernment. The next, focus. Again, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is excellent and 1 is, well, not so much. Focus, generosity, initiative, listening, passion, positive attitude, and problem solving. Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 in those 7 areas. Focus, generosity, initiative, listening, passion, positive attitude, and problem solving. And when you're done with that 7, add up your score. And then the next 6 actually. Responsibility, security, self-discipline, servanthood, teachability, and vision. So on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is excellent and 1 not so much, rate your scale on the 10, rate scale of 1 to 10, responsibility, security, self-discipline, servanthood, teachability, and vision. And then add up that column. And when you're done with that, you'll add all 3 columns together and divide that by 21. And that'll show you your where you land in that, what's your average. So that'll show you on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you fall. Now, again, there's 20, but we're going to divide it by 21, and I'll tell you why we do that in a little while. So you should have a score there that looks at your self-assessment. This is kind of a self-assessment of your leadership number. What's your lid number? These are the elements that make up your leadership lid. And the key to do then is to take this same assessment and give it to those people closest to you. Maybe an assistant, maybe fellow manager, maybe someone at home, and have them rate you on a scale of 1 to 10 and do the same exercise and see where the gap is. The gap overall, and then the gap of each individual piece. Now the key is on this is to be open and to be transparent and to be vulnerable a little bit. So 2 things, I would say pick somebody that you trust. Pick somebody that is a champion of yours, because this is going to be good feedback for you. Someone told me yesterday, I need to focus more. I think, yeah, that's true. I need to focus more. What's that look like? Help me understand. How would you know? How would I know if I'm focusing more? Because it's easy to say you need to do this or you need to do that, but sometimes what's that mean? What's that look like? How do I play that out in my world? So if you go through these elements here to figure out what the lid number is for your leadership, overall you'll have a number. And then the key is to find the ones that you're strong on and increase those. The key is to focus on your strengths here and then to manage the weaknesses. And it depends on which one are weak. But look at that and see, how do I get better at problem solving? Maybe you need to learn more about that. How do I get better at listening? Most people listen to respond rather than listen to listen. And there's a great saying that says, we feel at peace when we feel that we've been listened to. And I've noticed from coaching and working in with teams and environments, one of the major causes of conflict is communication, but specifically it's listening. We don't listen. We listen to respond, or we listen to defend. We don't listen to listen. And that's one of the best things you can do as a leader, is to listen to the folks around you. Actually listen to them. Listen to them. So take this and have that assessment, maybe a couple different people, one at work, one at home, or a couple at work and one at home, and find out what your score is. I'd be interested in knowing what your score is, and where you're strongest, where you're the strongest. Send us an email or respond in the chat box and tell us where you're the strongest. Now let's get serious about, how do you raise that? How do we raise that number? Again, ask those closest to you, and then evaluate and consider what's the similar, what's different. And then go back to the qualities and find where you can make the greatest impact by growing. Usually it's your strength. Work on your strength, increase your strength. Focus on that. Focus on your strengths. We're pretty good at telling people what we're not good at. We're not very good at telling people what we're good at. So sometimes don't be surprised if the numbers you put down to find out where your leadership lid is lower than someone else assesses you. And have them give you an example. Tell me specifically Where did you see me doing that? So you'll get a clear picture on how you need to do more of whatever it was you did. Things you can do today to raise your lid. Value the experiences you've had with reflection. We are all so busy stepping and fetching, doing, getting it done, that we don't take time. We don't have time scheduled to reflect on, what did I do today? What happened? What were some wins today? What are some things that worked out better than I expected? What are some things that I can improve on tomorrow? Jim Rohn, someone who I used to follow a lot, said, at the end of the day, you got to play back the tapes. Now that kind of tells you when that was. It was in the 70s and 80s, but it's still very valuable is to take that time. David Allen from Getting Things Done says you should have a weekly review, right? Go back over your week. What happened? What fell through the cracks? You should have a monthly review. You should have a quarterly review. Yourself, going back through and seeing, what do I need to do? How do I need to get better? Keep a journal or someplace safe where you can write down some things that you are going to commit to, some things you're going to work on. That is huge. Most people, I'll tell you folks, most people don't do that. We go from one thing to the other thing to the other thing, and we never take time to go back and think, what could I have done better? What worked? What didn't work? Second thing is to invest in some training. We'd be glad to help with that. You can also attend these. We're going to have one of these a month at least on the professional development side. The next one is February 13th, and we'll go through the next 2 laws, plus answer any questions you have in the meantime. If you have any questions, feel free to email Rick at ETI Indy or email me, Jack, at ETI Indy, and we'll be sure to get back with you and answer the questions that you have. But you can invest in training. Now, invest in training doesn't mean you have to buy training. It means spend some time. It could also mean you pick a book you're going to read. It could also mean that you have a meaningful conversation with other people about that. A meaningful conversation. So let me just give you the dates through June of these. So you want to make sure you get registered for these. February 13th, March 13th, April the 10th, May the 8th, and June the 12th. February 13th, March 13th, April 10th, May 8th, and June 12th. So other ways to raise the lid for you: mentorship or coaching. Find somebody who's a good leader. Find somebody who you would rate highly, 9 or 10 on all those scores, all those different elements, and then ask them to help you get better at this or get better at whatever ones you want to improve on. I mentioned an intentional conversation. Have a mastermind. Grab 3 or 4 people from your company and meet for coffee, or meet once a month or twice a month and talk about, here's what I'm working on. It becomes an accountability group. It becomes also someplace where you can give back because you can help somebody, right? Reflect on who's been a lid lifter, that's hard to say, in your life. Who is somebody in your life from grade school on that made a difference for you, right? What characteristics were they? What are the things that stand out to you? What are the things that stand out? What did that person do? I remember a 7th grade football coach. There were 2 of them. And in our high school, Vincent's, Lincoln Alice's, the freshmen were undefeated for the freshman football team was undefeated for 7 years. The high school football team had a losing season or not undefeated for as many years. And what was the difference? The players were pretty much the same, a couple exceptions maybe. The coaching was the difference. Those coaches in 7th grade got more out of a group of folks that I'd ever seen. Don Taylor, who's now passed, and Paul Kokenauer, awesome coaches because they believed in the strengths of each individual person and built on the strengths of that person. That wasn't always the same as we went on. So focus on that. Catch people doing right. My business partner, Tommy, and I were doing a training with a major international company, and we noticed that they weren't catching people doing right. So we introduced the 1-minute manager, and one of the managers flippantly said, Hey, this is 1980s technology. Yeah, it is. And somehow you missed it, right? Catch people doing something right. Look for what people are doing right. You can find something. I'll grant you that sometimes it is hard to find something doing right. But hey, Jimmy, you wore shoes today. Great job, man. Thanks. Right? Catch them doing something right. The other thing to help you raise your lid, a really important thing, critically important thing, is to make a stop doing list. What am I going to stop doing? Maybe it's giving in too easy. Maybe it's always saying yes, right? There are certain behavior styles that their natural inclination is to say yes. They don't want to let people down. They don't want to let others down. So they jeopardize themselves. Maybe you know someone, or maybe you happen to be one of those people that is always there for everybody, right? Well, make a stop doing list. That doesn't mean you have to go cold turkey, but start with a no every now and then. Maybe it's watching TV versus reading a book, right? Make a stop doing list. I'm sure you all set goals for the year. And if you didn't, we need to talk about that. We've got a couple of goal setting sessions coming up. A big one on February the 8th that I'd like to invite you all to, but make a stop doing list. Make a list of things you're going to stop doing that will help you get closer to your goals. So for you today, what's your action plan on raising the lid, right? What are you going to do to raise your leadership lid? So just 2 things, no more than 2, specifically, right? So a goal should be specific. It should be measurable. It should be appropriate to your work, your world. Should be time bound, right? It should be realistic. If you're, a branch manager at a location, and you want to be the chief financial officer or CEO of the company, well, is that realistic? Make sure that whatever your goal is realistic. And it's important to be written down. Written down, that's key. So what are you going to do to raise your leadership lid? Just 2 things. I'd like to hear from you. Send me an email, Jack at ETINDY, ETINDY, there's only 1 I in it. I'd like to hear what your goals are. I'd like to help hold you accountable to those. Right? What are you going to do to raise your leadership lid? So create your own action plan, and then find somebody around you that can help hold you accountable. Not somebody that's going to dog you that if you didn't get something done, but somebody that can hold you accountable. How are you doing on that? How are you doing on saying no more? Where have you successfully done that? Where do you need help doing that? How can I help you? So find an accountability partner. I'm seeing, as the economy gets better, I'm seeing that the trend seems to be the major thing that people want more than anything else is accountability. They say they do, but they want somebody to talk to them about how am I doing? Where am I going? Which also talks about feedback. It talks about giving people feedback. So for your action plan, right? Your action plan, what are you going to do to raise your leadership lid? I've given you plenty of things to work on here in our short time together. But the key thing is to take action. This year I set 3 words for my year. I looked at my year last year. I went through every month. I went through the whole year and thought, where could I have been better? What could I have done? And it boiled down to 3 things for me. It boiled down that I need to ask. That's one of my words. I need to ask more. Ask and you shall receive. Knock and it shall be opened. I learned from one of my coaches that it actually says, keep knocking and it will be open. Keep seeking and it will be revealed. So ask is my first one. Ask. My second one is believe. Believe that I can ask. Believe that people are going to say yes. Believe in my abilities. Believe in others. That's a big one, which also goes to courage, right? So it goes to courage. Having the courage to say, will you buy this? Will you make an action plan? Will you follow up with me? Ask, believe, and my third one is to act. I got to tell you, last year I had some awesome, you wouldn't believe the cool ideas I had last year, but I didn't put them into action, all of them. I put some into action, but not all of them. So this year, my word is act. Take action. Once I set a goal, what's the very first thing I can do on that goal? So I hope sharing my 3 words with you might inspire you to create 3 words of your own. And again, I'd like to hear what they are. So let us know how we can help. Let us know how we can support you. So make sure you have an action plan. That's key. All right, so that's the first one. The law of the lid. That's the most critical law in leadership, is the law of the lid. You've got to become a better leader. I have to become a better leader. We have to increase our leadership ability. Right? I have a strong desire, but now I got to work on my ability. Okay? So, any questions, anyone? I'm going to unmute everybody, so that may be a lot of racket. So if you have a question, say your name and say what company you're with, and then ask your question. So pretty soon you're unmuted now. So if you'd like to ask a question, say your name and your company and state your question. And if you don't have one, that's okay. All right. Somebody texted a message into the chat box. It says, do I really have to write these down? Yeah, you do. You really have to write down what you're going to do, what you're going to commit to. And it should be time bound. When you're going to achieve it. I would even throw in there, how are you going to feel when you accomplish it? Attach some emotion to it. So yes, write it down in a journal or a notebook, someplace safe. Most of us don't carry journals or time calendars anymore. We have our phones or tablets, but I would suggest that you write things down with a pencil or pen and paper. Studies are showing that when you do that, I think the 3M company did a research study, 37% more likely to succeed if you actually write down with pen and paper versus electronically. So I'm going to mute everybody again because there's some background noise driving. You're welcome to use the chat box. And let's go on to the second law. Let's go on to the second law that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the law of influence. The law of influence is the measure of leadership. It's the true measure of leadership, influence, nothing more, nothing less. That's the true measure of what leadership is influence, right? If you don't have influence, you'll never be able to lead others. This next slide reminds me when I was with a major insurance company, one of my fellow coworkers, we all got a promotion. There was 12 of us that got a promotion into a certain leadership position, and I'll just say his name was Jim. He wanted to have a fancy title because he wanted to have authority over the folks we worked with, and it's not about that. It's not about that. It's about if you're leading and no one's following, you're just taking a walk. I love that quote. If you think you're leading but no one's following, that's a sure sign that you're not a leader yet. You haven't perfected those skills. So how can you have more influence on people? I put several quotes in here, but true leadership cannot be awarded. This is the title. Can't be appointed or assigned. It comes only from influence, and that can't be mandated. It's got to be earned. Earned by the kind of person that you are. Earned by, well, we'll talk about how you earn that. We'll go through that. Right. So that's the key thing, is it's got to be earned. Now there's some myths of leadership I want to talk about. The first one is the management myth. They're more so today than it used to be, but it used to be that leadership books were really management books, right? Management is about maintaining a system or a process. Leadership is about influencing people to follow. And the key is that management is not leadership. Just because someone got a promotion doesn't mean they're a leader. Just because they're a manager of something doesn't mean they're a leader. There are many leaders who don't have the title, right, who may be a frontline worker, but people follow them. Look to those people and engage them, enlist them in your quest for growth, for what you're working on. Help them grow because they are leaders. Another one that kind of busted my bubble, but is the entrepreneurial myth, right? Many entrepreneurs are, sure, they started a business or they started something. They have skills of seeking opportunities and going after them. But sometimes they're not that good with people. There's a lot of entrepreneurs I know that are kind of caustic, actually. Kind of caustic. Knowledge myth. The knowledge myth says IQ or education doesn't necessarily equate to leadership. You can be smart but not be there. Okay, so there's 5 of these. The pioneer myth, that is to say that anyone's out in front of the crowd is a leader, and that's not true. The leader not only has to be out in front, but they have to be intentionally coming behind to create followers, and that's key. And then position, that's the one about title. Position, these are myths of leadership. Position myth says it's not position. There's a great quote by Stanley Huffey, this one right here. It's not the position that makes the leader, it's the leader that makes the position. And so that's why I said about the front line. Right? Somebody on the front line they may be the real leader in your organization. They may be the person who is actually has a following. And that's not necessarily a bad thing at all. So John says the true measure of leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. There's 2 quotes by John that I absolutely love. That's one of them. True measure of leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And the second one is the quote that we opened up with the first time, which talks about everything rises and falls on leadership. You know, if you look at sports teams, it's easier to look at them. But if you look at a team who's not performing, usually the reason why they're not performing is the leadership. It's the coach, it's the coaching staff, and even more important than that, it's the owner. It's the owner of the team. So our Indianapolis Colts right now are going through perhaps a search for a new coach since they've gotten rid of the coach that they had, Chuck Pagano. He was a good coach in some respects. Might know the X's and O's really well, but as far as a leader, getting things to happen on the field, at the beginning of the year, it seemed like the Colts couldn't play 4 full quarters. As a matter of fact, my son John and I went to the Steelers game, and somehow our tickets were right in the middle of a bunch of Steelers, which it seemed like there were more Steeler fans there than there were Colts fans, which was kind of weird. But we were ahead. If you remember that game, we were ahead in that game. And I said to the guy next to us, I said, "Don't worry, the fourth quarter is where we always lose the game." And sure enough, that's where we lost the game. It was more predictable to know when we were going to mess up than it was to know when we were going to come through. And that's about influence. That's about the law of the lid. That's about influence. So usually what a lot of companies do when they look at what is it, well, how do you change things? 2 things you can do to dramatically change an organization. One is grow or change the leader. The second is work on customer-facing skills. Work on skills that affect the customer experience. Have everybody in the organization, from the person who cleans the place to the person who runs the place, learn customer-facing skills, client-facing skills, patient-facing skills. That is the one area that most people don't work on, and that's the one area that'll make the biggest difference next to leadership. Now, a lot of times when I do a corporate training or work with somebody in coaching, they'll say, well, I'm trying to do this, but the person above me has some challenges. That may be your situation, right? That the person you directly report to. Okay, so given what it is, that's the hand you're dealt. What do you do with it? So you have to step up and work on your skills. You have to step up and work on your leadership. You have to step up and work on your influencing skills. And we'll talk about some ways you can do that before we end here, right? So 7 factors of leadership, seven pieces that enter into this law of influence, right? 7 factors that enter into this, okay? The first one is character. People can sense truth, integrity, authenticity. People can sense that, right? So you have to be that character is critical. Truth, integrity, authenticity. It's who you are. Character is who you are, right? The relationships. Surround yourself with the right people. And, it's who you know, who the leader knows. Sometimes the right person A leader can be a great leader by having people around them that are really good. Okay. And that's a key thing, is that some leaders are worried that if they have somebody really strong around them, that'll be a threat. And I got to tell you from experience, from watching it countless times, the stronger the people are around you, the better you will look. So surround yourself with the right people. Find those people. Find what makes them tick. Find what makes them go. What do they want to accomplish? And help them get that. Help them achieve their goals. And in the meantime, you'll be amazed at the work they'll do with you and for your organization. Knowledge, study, learn, take time. Know the facts. Do your homework. Right? Read. Listen to podcasts. Watch YouTube if you want to. Take a class. And study can be with a group or it can be one-on-one. So character, relationships, knowledge, that's what you know. And then intuition, that's kind of like the sixth sense, if you will. What you feel, it's energy, it's morale, it's timing, it's momentum. It's what do you feel? A lot of times I hear people say, I've got this gut feeling. Well, don't discount that gut feeling. Listen to that gut feeling, right? Play on it. Think about what's that gut feeling telling me about this decision, this team, this particular initiative, right? Listen to it, because that could be really huge. Another one is your experiences. What challenges have you had in the past? Where have you been? Like what's your road look like? What's been happened to you in the past? That's the challenges, right? So what storms have you weathered? And weathering storms doesn't all have to be work experience. There could be personal stuff in too that you've weathered, right? What are some things that you've weathered? What are some things that you've faced, that you've risen past, right? That's important to know. Past successes. What's your track record? Those successes is what have you done? What have you accomplished? Have you extended yourself? Have you taken a risk and been successful? Right? It doesn't have to be a big risk. I was in a mastermind group yesterday with some fellow speakers and authors, and Tim Shore, one of my friends, said, that he took a heck of a risk because he has indie hypnosis, and he went from that to doing more speaking, and it was an 85% hit on his income. Well, that's a pretty big hit on income, right? But that's a success because now he's back up to where he was. Actually, he's past that. But that's a past success. That's an experience. From that, there was knowledge gained, right? So a quote by Harry Overstreet, well, let's do ability. Sorry, I missed ability. What are you capable of? Can you be a good coach? A good coach is others first, right? Listen, ask questions for really understanding, not for setup, not for to hurt somebody. Ask questions of how can we help you? How can we move forward? How can we make this better? What do you need? Now, sometimes you can't deliver on it because it might be an unrealistic request, or it might be that something outside of the controls that you have, or corporate restraints or whatever, right? But it's good to know that, because you'll never know when there'll be a time to play on that. One of my favorite books is Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive by Harvey Mackay. And in that book, Harvey would say that, so if you don't know who Harvey Mackay is, he owned a little company called Mackay Envelope, but he also was the owner of the Timberwolves and very instrumental in Minnesota. He's from Minnesota, in Minnesota's sports world, and getting the new stadium up there, which the Super Bowl will be in a few weeks. He's a mover and a shaker. And his first book was Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive. And his salespeople at the Mackay Envelope Company, he required them to fill out a Mackay 66, they called it, which they would know 66 things about their customers, 66 different things. What's their favorite restaurant? What's their favorite dessert at their favorite restaurant? Are they politically focused? Is it okay to talk about politics in front of them? Are they pro-military for, our military folks, or are they against it? What are their political beliefs? So that you would know where to have a conversation and where not to have a conversation. But he also had a Mackay 33 for individuals on his team, that he wanted to know 33 things about those folks. There are people who have worked together for years that probably don't know 33 things that are important to their coworkers, right? How do you do that? And you can't do it all in one time, or it'll be an interrogation. You have to do it over time. All right. So the very essence of all power to influence is getting the other person to participate. The buzzword for today is not participate, it's called engagement. Gallup has done studies on this for, I don't know, since the 90s, I think. I know at least since the 90s. It may go back to the 80s. But what Gallup says is that 67% of people are either disengaged or actively disengaged. And now, as I was preparing my notes and working on this, my wife asked me, Kathy said, what's the difference between engaged and disengaged? I mean, actively disengaged, right? Being disengaged and actively disengaged. And so I pointed out an example that actively disengaged would be doing little things that would undermine the organization, little things that would cause problems, right? Disengaged would mean that they're kind of complacent, right? I mean, they'll do the work, may take longer, but actively disengaged, and that's a small percentage. I think they said 12%, and it varies from 12 to 17% as high as I've seen it. But those actively disengaged folks are the folks that are figuring out some way to throw a wrench into their works, right? To mess things up. So you've got to watch that. And usually that happened over time. They weren't listened to. They weren't responded to. They created a story in their mind. And now they have this whole big drama situation. I'm sure you guys on this webinar don't have any drama situations in your office, but there's ways to find what those are and to fix them. And if you're struggling with that, again, let us know. Let us know what they are. We can help. All right. What's your action plan on the law of influence, right? What are you going to do to increase your level of influence? What are you going to do? No more than 2 things, right? Think about what you usually rely on most to persuade people to follow you, right? Go back to that. Think about character, relationships, knowledge, intuition, right? Think about that. What do you usually rely on? What's your fallback? What do you do to get people to follow you? How do you do that? How would you know that? You would do that in a time from reflecting. Okay, what was today like? Right? It doesn't have to be 2 hours. It can just be 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 5 minutes. Think about what happened today. What are you going to change? What are you going to make different? Right? So 2 things. Create your own action plan. Find an accountability partner. Email me, jack@etindy.com. I'll be more than happy to converse with you on how we might help you achieve, increasing your influence ability or lifting your lid, increasing your lid. We want to help, right? Leadership, if we can affect leadership, the one little thing, if we can help leaders be better, our model here is to educate, equip, and empower. And that's, if we can help you in any of those areas, to educate you, to equip you, to empower you, that's what we want to do, right? So let us know how we can do that. And maybe it's just a brainstorming conversation. Maybe it's a whiteboard session. Let's talk about some ways we could do that, right? So just reach out to us. I hope you've enjoyed our time together today, going through the first of the 21 laws. The law of the lid, the first and most important law. And the second law is the law of influence, which is secondly most important, because you got to be better for you. And once you get better for you, you can start to then have an effect on others and have them follow you. Again, my email is jack@etindy.com. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love any feedback. How can we make this better? What do you need from us to make these? Because we've got them scheduled throughout the year. I gave you the schedule through May. How can we make these better for you? Please give us some feedback. Love to hear it. Thanks everyone for being here. We've made a recording of this. It'll be up as soon as I edit out the first half, because I got on a little bit early to test everything. So as soon as I cut that off the first half, we'll put that up there, and Rick will probably send out a link so that you'll know when that's out there, right? So folks, thanks for being here. It's been great experiencing some time over lunch with you. Hope you got a couple tidbits. Don't forget to email me, jack@etindy.com.